Hello Geeks and Gamers, Matt Lemke here with True Gamer Goggles, gamer-goggles.com, and today this is the final episode of Roleplay Ramblings for my 4th season Kickstarter. And it's a doozy, it really is. This is a good one, I think. And I had a little bit of fun with this. And as you can see, I'm not changing the title, but I think throughout the course of this you're going to see there's a little bit twist in the thinking of the maturity process of my thinking on this topic. It's not something, well, we'll get to that in a minute. The morality of PC death in RPGs. So the question is, should GMs kill player characters? And I really had to do a lot of thinking about this. It's something that as a player, I haven't really experienced too much. I only ever had one player get killed off in a story. All the others were retired. And whether they retired by death or whatever, I don't consider that necessarily PC death, because when I did want to retire a character, I wanted the character to go out in a bang or whatever. It was kind of like a social contract between the GM and myself. As a GM, I tend not to kill my players' characters off, because I don't really know why. I've never really experienced a need to. So I just haven't done it. But recently, I saw a player, and this is actually what stemmed this whole thing. I saw a young player have one of their first players get killed off, and the player was so frustrated that their character died that they didn't want to play the game anymore. It took a lot of work to get this player back on their feet and back into role-playing. And now, some of you might say that, well, you know, dying is a fact of life. Well, dying is a fact of life. But this is a game. And that's where the struggle starts to come in. It's a game, so should it reflect reality? How much reality should be in the game? I don't really know all of those answers yet, but some of this has actually helped me. But here's what I've learned, okay? First, I looked at the role of death. What does it serve? There is a lot of death in literature. Lots of people die. But within role-playing, it can add a sense of realism. It can create character depth for the other characters that are experiencing the loss. It can be used to eliminate a problem or retire a character. And what I mean by a problem, I mean a player that is just being dumb with the way they play their character and creating problems within your group. Now, with that being said, I think that you can easily cross the line into bullying. And I'm using that term lightly because I don't think killing a character can constitute as bullying unless there's a lot more history than just killing off a character. But I think if you just kill off a character without talking to a player, or let me rephrase that. I think if you kill off a player's character without first talking to the player in a planned situation, and that's the key to this, a planned situation, that you might cause problems and tension between yourself and at least one of your players. Now, if the character just does a Leroy Jenkins, or he fails his roles miserably, and he dies that way, that is a different situation. I'm talking about a situation where you're like, aha, you know, I know that this character has a weakness to this, so I'm going to put this in here so he dies. That type of thing, or that type of plotting. Basically premeditated murder. Think of it like that. So, now, is it beneficial? Well, death is a fact of life. We have already covered that a little bit. But for the most part, we don't look forward to it. And I know as a player, when I'm playing a character, I don't look forward to it unless I'm ready to eliminate my character from the game. So and I'm pretty sure most of my PCs don't welcome it either. So it's not something that is necessarily good for the group. But then again, there are certain things that make it really, really, really tough. Like if you're playing through Rise of the Runelords, a lot of people die in that adventure. And they die a lot. And they play over and over again. I had a friend of mine tell me last year at Gen Con, well, let me back up. At Origins, or maybe it was just even before Origins, we were chatting. They said, oh, we're playing through Rise of the Runelords right now, and we're at like 3rd or 4th level. And I talked to him again at Gen Con. He said, oh, we've already gone through 4 sets of PCs. And they stopped and they took a break and they went on to another adventure. Is that bad storytelling? I'm not so sure. And again, this is something that is between you and your players. I think if you keep doing things that are repeatedly stupid, you probably should die. But here, and this is a big but, we are telling a story. In literature, historically, the heroes don't die as a whole. I mean, yeah, you have certain heroes that do this really superheroic thing and they sacrifice their life and they're the hero. That's what makes them a hero. That's their heroic event. Or they were already a hero before that, and that sets them apart from everybody else. And that's fine and dandy. You can do stuff like that. But as a whole, if you look at heroes, if there's a group of 5, there's a good chance that 4 of the 5 are going to survive as a whole. There are, and again, there are arguments that can be made on the other side, but I think if you look at literature in its full spectrum, more heroes live than die. And you can even make the argument that in many cases the villains live. So as PCs or as GMs, do we want the villains to die too? I don't know. It's a different little twist, different little spiel. So heroes rarely die. Are there other things to consider? Well, yes. I think the biggest thing you need to consider is it's your community. It's your group of gamers and friends. It's a little bit different when you're GMing at a convention or you're demoing a game at a local store or a library or wherever you've set up to do your demo. But it's a community, and you need to be relatively sensitive to the players around you. If you like killing players and your players don't like being killed, I'm not saying you should change your ways, but maybe you kind of would have more fun in another community where players didn't care about their characters as much. Or on the flip side, if you're a player that doesn't care if your character dies, well, actually for a player it's even easier to fit in, but if you're playing and you're moving on and you're doing your combat and then all of a sudden you fail your rolls and I just want to kill my character off, that's fine because that really only affects you. I would encourage you as a player to try and create character tension among the other players with your death so it's a little bit more meaningful. Now I guess the next question is really kind of for GMs, and it's how sensitive should the GM be? I think a good GM, or my definition of a good GM, is one who loves to tell stories. And if that's truly the case, I think you weigh whether or not the PC's death helps move your story along, or helps move that player's character's story along. And that's something that should be done with the 2 of them. And relatively how sensitive your group is. This isn't RPG related, but I'm sure somewhere somebody has played this. They recently killed Drizzt, or effectively he's dead. They're still telling stories about his prehistory, or even better yet, they killed Chewbacca, of all things in Star Wars. They made R.A. Salvatore kill Chewbacca. And I am sure that many, many, many people to this day are still angry about it. We all know that it's a fact that people need to die. So why do we get upset about it? Chewbacca was an endearing character to us all. And I'd be willing to bet that Mr. Salvatore has even received hate mail for it. Because Wizards of the Coast wanted them to kill him off. Now, as a GM, you're filling R.A. Salvatore's role as the storyteller. Will you be hated? And I think that's really the question you want to know. And maybe you want to be hated a little bit because that means you're doing your job. But I think if you just come out of the blue and say your character's dead because of this, this, and this, you won't be as successful as a GM. I think deaths need to be purposeful. They need to be worked out with the player so that they somehow help move forward the story and the stories of those playing the game. So, in summation, I originally started to talk about death as a moral issue within role-playing, and over the course of doing my research, which was mostly just thinking through things in my head and finding out what the purpose of death was in gaming, I've changed it to better storytelling. Death is okay. When I first started this, I thought death was not a good thing. But death is okay if it's done within the proper parameters. And for me, those parameters are premeditated. And I'm not going to say that it's murder, but I used premeditated, so many of you will jump there anyway. I think it should be planned and plotted carefully with the player in such a way that it moves everybody's story forward. And I think if you do that, you're off to much better storytelling. Because if you do that right, and you're, in my opinion, telling everybody, or not telling the story in such a way and encouraging the players to tell their character story within your story, I think everybody will be affected by it. And I think that's part of what good storytelling is. I don't think anybody wants their player or their friend's player character to pass away prematurely. We tend to invest some time into our characters, and just like in real life, you don't want to see your wife and kids pass away, or probably most of your coworkers. Some of you might. I tend to work alone, so I don't have that issue. I don't have to wrestle with that. And it's just like you just don't want to see those people go away. And I think the same is said for our characters. So death has to fill the purpose of moving the story forward. Anyway, thanks for listening to Roleplay Ramblings. This is Matt Lemke with Through Gamer Goggles, gamer-goggles.com.